In this little tutorial, we're going to learn how to embroider this flower. This is a poppy flower, and it's so cute and simple, and it's a perfect project for beginners. So if you are new to embroidery, this is a really great place to start because it just uses a simple stitch. So we're going to gather our materials. You'll need your pattern, which is pre-printed onto this water-soluble paper. You'll need an embroidery hoop. I've got a 3-inch hoop here. You're also going to need your thread. You can use, there's any colors you want. I've got green and orange. A needle for embroidery. I like to use a size 5 embroidery needle. And then we've got our fabrics. So I've got a piece of linen fabric. This is a piece of flannel fabric that's just used as like a second layer. And then we're going to have a piece of felt, which we will use at the very end of our project. So let's get started. We're going to start with our linen fabric, and you're just going to lay it on the table. And then grab your pattern that's pre-printed onto this water-soluble paper, and it's a sticker. So what you're going to do is you're just going to peel off that back piece of paper and stick this water-soluble paper onto the fabric. Keep in mind that it is water-soluble, so don't let your project get wet until the very end of the project, or this paper will dissolve. So I've just got it placed on the middle of my fabric, and then I'm grabbing my flannel fabric and I'm just laying it underneath this linen fabric. I'm just putting those two pieces of fabric together. I really like embroidering on linen, but it's a little bit thin, so I like to double it up. Then I'm grabbing my embroidery hoop, and to unscrew an embroidery hoop, you're just going to spin the little knob at the top to loosen it. And then an embroidery hoop has two pieces. There's an inner hoop and an outer hoop. The inner hoop is going to go on the bottom of our fabric, so it's underneath my flannel fabric and my linen, and I'm just centering it over the fabric. And then I'm going to lay the outer hoop on top of that and just kind of make sure that the fabric is smooth around all the sides. Make sure that my design is perfectly centered in the middle there. And then once I like the spot that it's in, make sure that the fabric is smooth. I'm going to kind of tug on the edges. Then I can tighten the hoop. So I'm going to hold on to that screw at the top, and I'm just going to twist the little screw until it tightens so that my hoops don't pop off and so it doesn't come undone. I like to check the back and make sure that the back layer is also smooth. So I'm kind of pulling on this fabric a little bit, just working around the circle to make sure everything is smooth and it's ready to embroider. So this is ready to go. Now we're going to grab our thread. And embroidery thread has two ends. There's the little DMC logo at the top, and then this side has the numbers at the bottom. You always want to pull your thread out from the number side so it doesn't get tangled. That's just a little tip for you. So I'm going to take out I took out like 3 little lengths of thread, and then I'm just going to trim that off. If you're very new to embroidery, it's always best to start with shorter strands, and then as you get more comfortable, you can grab more. So you'll notice how embroidery thread is made up of 6 individual strands, and they're all put together into one strand. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually pull out 2 strands of thread. So I'm splitting my thread like this. I've got two threads in the right hand and then the rest in the left. The other 4 are in the other hand. And I'm just going to pull the 2 strands apart, and you kind of have to like smooth out the edge so that it doesn't get tangled. Smooth out the bottom part of your thread. But you're just going to pull this apart until you're left with just the 2 strands. Sometimes I anchor this tail in my mouth just to like keep it from twisting, but if you just do it slowly, you can easily pull out those 2 strands. And then I'm going to thread my needle with just these 2 strands. So I like to lick the ends of my thread and then pinch it together so that it stays like really close together when I'm trying to stick it through the eye of my needle. I'm going to grab my needle and I'm just going to push it through the eye of the needle there. So pinch in the ends there, stick it through, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the needle down halfway down my thread. So we took out 2 strands of thread, but we're actually going to embroider with 4 strands total. So to do this, I'm pulling my needle halfway down the thread, and I'm going to knot the 2 ends together. And then this will create 4 strands because the 2 and 2 are now doubled up, and that will be 4 strands. So to knot the 2 ends, I like to just wrap it around my fingers and then stick that tail through the loop. I usually do it twice. You just do it enough so that it's not going to pull through your fabric and the thread will stop on the back side of your fabric. So I've got 4 strands now because I took out 2 strands, doubled it up, and tied both ends together. So the needle is locked in there. All right, we're gonna do a back stitch. So a back stitch is one of the simplest stitches in embroidery. You're just gonna start by bringing your needle up. You can start anywhere on your pattern. I like to start at the bottom of the stem, and I'm just gonna do one small stitch forward. So I brought my needle up from underneath and I'm going right back down into the fabric, just one tiny stitch along that line. Then I'm gonna bring my needle up from underneath, one stitch length ahead of where the needle just went through the fabric. So there's gonna be a little gap. Then I'm going to insert the needle back into the fabric, touching that previous stitch so that they're connected. Again, I'm going to bring the needle up from underneath, but I'm going ahead one stitch length, and then I'll go back and touch that previous stitch so that they're connected. And you're just going to do the same stitch all over all the lines. It's called a back stitch because you bring the needle up ahead and then you stitch back and touch the previous stitch. So they call it a back stitch. And this stitch is great for outlining, which is what we're doing here. If you don't want to, you can also like fill in the petals and do whatever you want. But this tutorial is just teaching us a basic back stitch so you can know how to embroider by doing an outlining stitch. You can embroider anything with this stitch. So I'm just bringing my needle up ahead, one stitch length, and then I'm going to go back and touch that previous stitch. This is, I would say, the most basic embroidery stitch. This is what it looks like on the back side. Just, this should be a single line. Yeah, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to speed up this video here as I go through the rest of this stem. You want to do small stitches, not too long, but the longer you do, it'll just look different. It'll just give you a different look. So smaller stitches help when you're doing curved edges and stuff. Anyways, I skipped ahead. So here I've got the last part of my stem that I'm working on, and then we're going to move on to the orange thread. So that's what that looks like. This will work for, like I said, any flower, any outlining you're doing, but let's tie it off on the back. So to do this, you're going to slide your needle underneath a stitch that's close by, and then there's this little loop here. You're going to stick your needle back through that loop and pull it tight. Again, you're going to slide your needle underneath that stitch, stick it through that loop, and pull it tight. And you'll do that twice to make a knot. So we'll do that again in the video a little bit after we work with our next color of thread. But that's how you tie it off on the back side so that it doesn't come undone. We just kind of anchored it to another stitch. Okay, now I'm going to grab my orange thread. And again, I'm pulling the thread out from the side that has the numbers so that it doesn't get tangled. So take as much as you're comfortable working with, and then trim off that thread. And then we are going to split our thread again. So we're going to be using 4 strands total. So again, I'm going to take out 2 of the strands, just like we did with our green thread. And then with these 2 strands, I already separated them, we're going to thread our needle and pull our needle halfway down the thread and knot the 2 ends together. So to knot the 2 ends together, I just make a loop with it and then stick the tail through the loop. And I usually do it once or twice. So we're going to just keep going with our back stitch. So again, you're just going to you're just going to make a single stitch to start. So start anywhere you want, make one little stitch. And then you're going to go up ahead one stitch length, bring the needle all the way through, and then go back and touch that previous stitch. And that makes a back stitch. So you're just going to do that around all these lines, the curves, and even these little lines on the inside of our flower. We're just going to do like little straight stitches over those. I won't make you watch me do this entire flower, but I will skip ahead here in a little bit. But the stitch is really relaxing. You really don't have to think about it. Once you know how to do it, you can just kind of go. I like to watch a movie while I embroider, or a show or whatever. And this is easy enough that you can just like pick it up whenever you have a second and work on it. It's also a small project, so you can take it with you in the car if you're waiting in a carpool line, or you just have some time maybe at the airport, whatever you want. But I feel like embroidery is just a easy way to decompress and relax. It's kind of therapeutic, I feel like. So I've jumped ahead here to the last little part of my flower. I've got almost running out of thread, so I'm going to need to get more thread before I can finish that last petal. So I wanted to show you again how to tie it off on the back. So you're going to slide your needle underneath a stitch that's close by, anywhere on the back, that's somewhere just near where your thread is. You're going to pull your needle through, but you're not going to pull it all the way through. There's this little loop here. You're going to stick your needle back through that loop and then pull it tight. And you'll do that twice to create a knot. So you're going to slide your needle underneath that same stitch that you just used before, and then don't pull it all the way through. See that little loop? You're going to stick your needle through that loop and then pull it tight. And if you do that twice, you've got a knot, and that just secures it really well to another stitch, so you know it's not going to come out. Okay, so I grabbed more thread and I just finished up that petal. So now my flower is completely done. So again, I'm going to tie it off on the back, and repetition is always good. So I'll show you one more time how to tie it off. Slide your needle underneath a stitch. There's that loop. You're going to stick your needle through that loop and you're going to pull it tight. And then again, you're going to slide your needle underneath that same stitch. Stick it back through that loop and then pull it tight, and you've got a knot. So we'll trim that off, and then I'm going to show you how to get rid of the sticker that's still on your fabric, because we're done with the embroidery part. So we are going to take our embroidery out of the hoop. So we're going to unscrew the top part here, and I'm just holding on to the screw with my other hand so it doesn't spin. I'm going to pull off that top hoop, going to take out this hoop on the bottom side. And my two pieces of fabric are now stuck together. So I've got a bowl of warm water here, and I want to get this paper off. So to do that, I'm just going to submerge it in warm water and let it soak. I can kind of lightly rub my finger over it to help the paper dissolve more quickly, but it does take a little bit of time. So let it dissolve. I also like to run it under a faucet. I feel like the pressure from the faucet also helps the paper get off, because sometimes after it dries, if it still feels stiff, that just means that you didn't get all of the sticker out. So you have to wash it again. Okay, I've got a towel here, so I'm just going to lay my fabric flat on top of the towel. I've got the sticker all washed out. I'm just going to take the another end of the towel, and I'm going to press down onto the fabric to help get out any extra water and just help speed up the drying process. I'm not wringing out my embroidery because that can like damage your stitches, so you don't want to do that. But I like to just lay it flat to dry, so I'll just leave it here until it's dry. Okay, so it's been like 24 hours and my fabric is dry now. So I'm ready to put it back in my embroidery hoop, because that's how I like to display this little embroidery, is in the hoop. If you don't want to put it in the hoop, then you can display it however you want. You could put it in a cute picture frame. You could put it wherever you want. Do whatever you want with it. I'm going to display it in this hoop. So I'm going to show you how to finish off an embroidery that's in an embroidery hoop. So I just put my hoop back on, and I'm just going to tighten this ring, the screw at the top, so that my embroidery hoop doesn't fall off. And we are going to gather all the fabric on the back side so that we don't have any extra fabric just hanging off the sides. So I'm going to show you now how to do that next. So you're going to need a pair of fabric scissors, and you're just going to cut a circle around your hoop. I would say I'm leaving about inch and a half of fabric around the outside of my hoop as like a little border. I'm just getting off the excess fabric that I really don't need, that would just be in the way at this point. So going around my circle, and then I'm going to flip it over, and with my scissors I'm going to cut slits all around the fabric. So I'm hitting my scissors up against the rim of that embroidery hoop, and then I'm just cutting slits probably an inch and a half apart all the way around my circle. And I'm not measuring like how far apart my slits are. I'm just kind of eyeing it. But we're doing this just so we can cinch our fabric back and not have as much bulk in the way, because the fabric is a little bit bulky since we've got two pieces of fabric. Okay, so I've cut slits. So now I'm going to grab my needle and thread, and I've already got it here, my needle threaded. So, and then I'm just using 4 strands again, but you could use 6 if you want, or whatever. I'm just going to tie a knot here at the end, and then with my needle I'm going to overlap these slits of fabric by laying, like kind of by laying one over the top of the other, and then that's how I'm going to sew them together. They're just going to overlap. So again, I'm going to put one of them under, one of them over. I generally am keeping the one on the right side on the top and the one on the left side on the bottom, if that makes sense. And I'm just stitching around the circle, going over, under, over, under. So on that, I'm overlapping those pieces of fabric again. And now I'm bringing my needle up. Then I'm going to overlap these two pieces of fabric and bring my needle down. And then I'm going to overlap the next two pieces of fabric so that they're all getting connected and cinched together, basically. And bring my needle up. And then I will overlap the next section and bring my needle down. And I'm just going to keep doing this all the way around the circle. So overlapping, connecting these pieces of fabric. And like I said, we did the slits so that the fabric would lay flatter on the back side of our fabric and not feel as bulky. So I'm just doing a running stitch. That's what this is called when you just go over, under, and there's like gaps in the, well, not gaps, but anyways, yeah, this is called a running stitch. So then I'm back to where I started. I'm gonna just do a few overlapping stitches. So I'm gonna bring my needle down and then back up, and I'm just going through some of the same places where I've already stitched, just so that my thread is really secure. And then I'm going to tie it off. So I just slid my needle underneath a stitch and then went back through that loop. And I'm doing that twice, just like how we did on our embroidery, just to tie off that thread. And then I can cut that excess thread off. And then next we're going to grab our felt. So we're going to back. You could leave it like this if you want, but I like to add the felt just to have a clean back. So I'm going to grab a pen and I'm just going to draw a circle around the hoop. Try not to draw on the actual hoop. Just draw on the felt, because we're going to cut out a circle of felt that's going to go on the back of our embroidery. So I've got my circle here, and I'm going to trim, or I'm going to cut out this circle now. And I'm going to cut to the inside of the felt about, I don't know, about a centimeter on the inside, because I don't want the felt to be poking out the sides of the back of my embroidery hoop. So I'm going to cut the circle a bit smaller than the drawing of the actual hoop. Then I'm going to grab some thread. You can use any color. I'm using green. You will be able to see this thread on that back side. So pick a color that you like, because you can see it if you flip it over. So I'm just using I think I'm using 6 strands here, maybe 4, but it doesn't matter. 4 or 6 is fine. I'm going to lay my felt on top of the back of my fabric, or my hoop. And okay, so I'm bringing my needle up from underneath, and this is hiding the knot underneath, under there, right? So the knot is secure on the underneath side of my fabric. Then I'm going to lay my felt on top, and we're just going to do a whip stitch. So we're going to go through the fabric and the felt. So I'm going through both pieces of fabric, the linen that's in the hoop, and I'm connecting it to this felt. Okay, so that's our first stitch right there. Then I'm going to come back out, and I'm going to go through the linen and then up through the felt, cinching or getting both of those pieces of fabric connected. That's how we're attaching the felt. So again, I'm going to go through the linen and the felt, and I'm just going to go all the way around the circle doing this so that these two pieces of fabric are connecting. And you just want to make sure that you're keeping the felt in place, because especially at the beginning, it definitely takes practice, but you'll get better at it. I feel like getting started is the hardest part with the felt, because it kind of moves around. So use your other hand to kind of try to keep the felt in place while you're working. But once you get going, then the felt is kind of staying in its place, and then it's not as hard. So I'm going each stitch is about a centimeter apart, and I'm trying to keep the stitch lengths as uniform as possible as well. Here at the top, I am cutting off some excess felt because I'm trying to kind of pull on the felt as I work, so that it stays like with tight tension. And so the felt stretched a little, and so I had to trim some off. So we're here at close to the end. I've gone all the way around my circle. So to anchor this last stitch, I'm just going to go through the felt. And then I'm going to tie a knot again. So I'm going to slide my needle underneath that stitch, that last stitch I just did. And then I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I'm going to stick my needle back through that loop and pull it tight. And I'll do that one more time. So I'm going to slide my needle underneath that stitch, slip the needle back through that loop, pull it tight. So now I've got a knot. Now to just hide the end of this tail, I'm just going to stick my needle under and then up through the felt and trim it there so that that tail is like stuck underneath the felt and you can't really see it. And that's how you do the back of your hoop. So that is our finished product. It looks so cute. You can pop this on an easel and display it, or you can honestly tie a little ribbon on it and hang it on your Christmas tree, whatever you want to do with it. Thanks so much for joining me on this tutorial. I hope that you love embroidery as much as I do. Make sure you're following me on Instagram. My handle is Thread Unraveled, so you can see any new patterns, kits, and classes that I have available. See you next time.